I would like to discuss a topic that I've heard the phrase numerous times, and it's mentioned in the Zohar and in the Rishonim, and Chassidus gives it a little bit of gives it some ices that make it much more tangible and much easier to understand. The Zohar in Parshas in Sefer Shemos, Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, I believe it's Parshas Yisroi. So the Zohar refers to the Torah as Shmo Dekudsha Brichu, the names of Hashem. What does that mean? That's mentioned elsewhere in the Zohar as well, in Chelek Gimel and Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. So the Ramban, there's a number of Rishonim that talk about this, but the Ramban talks about it in simpler terms, and he mentions it in two places. He mentions it in his introduction to his Pirush on the Chumash, and it's mentioned in one of his droshes in DrashBeshvach HaTorah, page Yudalid Amud Beis. So the Ramban in his Hakdomato Chumash, so he quotes also another concept in the Zohar, that the Torah is it's dark fire on black fire on white fire. Eish chayed al ish levon. So he says initially the way the Torah was given was that there were all the words were together. There were no hefsek atevus. There were no spaces between the words, and that's kind of the way it was kind of initially given, whatever that means. And the way it was actually given over to Moshe was with the space between the words. So one of the ways to read the Torah is kind of like it's up for interpretation, at least on some, for the right people, or for the right the right reading, that it doesn't necessarily have to be read in the with the spaces that the way we have it. And I'm gonna go through a couple of examples where we see the names of Hashem in the Torah not using the spaces that we currently have. And that would be like the first way of understanding what does it mean that Torah is the names of Hashem, because really, if you break it up the right way, you'll find the names of Hashem all over the place. And actually, the Ramban quotes from a Sefer that I don't have my hands on, called Shemos HaTorah, which apparently goes through the whole Torah and really breaks up all the names. He mentions this in his Hakdama, that it's a Sefer Shemos Torah, something like that. And in this Sefer, it does all the homework and finds the names of Hashem throughout the whole Torah. But I found two sources, actually three sources. The Ramban mentions one, and then there's two others, a Tosfos and a Bartanura with a Tosfos Yom Tov, where they give two examples of where we find this. But this Sefer, Shemos HaTorah, apparently goes to the whole Torah and then does this. It would be very interesting to see that. Now, Ramban says that interestingly, we have this concept that the Koyach HaTorah keeps the world going. Or as the Alter Rebbe says in the first chapter of Shayichud V'Amunah, that the world was created with Asara Mamoris, with 10 utterances, and that's what keeps the world going. It's a continuous creation. And the Alter Rebbe concludes that which Asara Mamoris, 10 utterances, the 10 utterances of the Torah. So it's the Koyach of the Torah, the words in the Torah that keep the world going. So over here, the Ramban says that it's a little more than that. It's not just the words of the Torah; it's the words of the Torah, the names of Hashem within the words of the Torah that keep the world going. And therefore, the Ramban says that if even one letter, he says, based on this concept, we can understand why each little nuanced word in the Torah is so important, because beyond, in other words, even if you're missing a letter that seemingly doesn't necessarily change the meaning of the way we understand the Torah, but the letter possibly, if in terms of this other reading of the Torah, which incorporates the names of Hashem, it can affect that reading. So therefore, even a letter which to your understanding of the Torah is not necessarily crucial, in other readings it can be crucial. And then in his in the Ramban mentions in his sefer DrashBeshvach HaTorah, page Yadal Beis, he refers to this concept of the Zera Yesh Biyadenu Kabbalah Shalemus. We have a true tradition, and he gives one example, and he says that in the beginning, the first two words of the Torah, Bereish, three words of the Torah, Bereish is Bara Elikim. In the beginning, Hashem created the world. So he reads that, he puts the space in the word Bereishis between, it says Bereish Yizbara Elikim. So the word Bereishis is broken up into Bereish Yizbara Elikim at the beginning. There was this, I guess Elikim was created. I don't know. In other words, he gives an example of where we see you can break up the words of the Torah and have other interpretations, incorporating the kind of things that are happening Lamaila with Hashem. The Tosfos Yontif on a Mishnah in Sukka, Perek Dalid, Mishnah Hey. So the Tosfos Yontif over there, the Mishnah is talking about the different names of Hashem and things they said as they were walking around the Mizbeach, and they said Halal and so on and so forth. So part of the discussion over there, in the midst of the discussion, there's a mention of the name of Hashem that has 72 letters, and the Tosfos Yontif does the math for us, and he says if you open up a Chumash in Shmois Perek Yedalid, between pasuk over there's 3 or 4 psukim where if read properly, that's the 72 letter name of Hashem. Parsha Shmois Perek Yedalid, and he goes through the whole thing. I'm not don't try this at home, but that in those psukim are where we have mention of this, at least one of the sources for this 72 letter name of Hashem, and that would be this example of where we see Hashem's name incorporated in the Torah. A third example of where we see this concept is a Tosfos. I'm not bringing sources from Kabbalah. This is a Tosfos Yontif and a Tosfos. Here you have a Tosfos in Chagiga, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Dibar Maschel Ein. And over there, the Mishnah and the Gemara is talking about different topics that you can't discuss in public, and there's Ma'aser Merkava and Ma'aser Bereishis. So in the discussion of Ma'aser Bereishis, how many people could you talk about these topics in front of, and you have to be very careful the way you introduce Kabbalistic concepts to the public. So in the name of Rabbeinu Tam, he says that you take the first pasuk or two of the Chumash, and you don't have any spaces between the words. There's a name of Hashem that has 42 letters, and it's somewhere over there. Now, as I mentioned before, this concept is the names of Hashem in the Torah. The Alter Rebbe in Lekutei Torah gives a very interesting twist to this whole discussion. It's in Lekutei Torah, in the Yom Tov section. I think it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Tzemach Zayin Amud Beis. So it's in Sefer Devorim. Lekutei Torah. There's 5 sections to Lekutei Torah. So there's a little bit of Shemais, and then you have Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devorim, and Shir Hashirim. So Lekutei Torah is referred to, if you're referring to Lekutei Torah, there's Lekutei Torah section A, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, or Hey. So this is in section Daled. It's in the Devorim section before Shir Hashirim. So it's section Daled, Tzemach Zayin Amud Beis. And Alter Rebbe says like this, a beautiful pshat. He says Torah is called the names of Hashem. What's a name? A name is when you want to connect to someone, you call his name. So when we learn Torah, we're connecting to the name of Hashem by calling out his name and connecting to him by means of Torah study. Now the Tzemach Tzedek has an interesting twist on this. Tzemach Tzedek in Shmois, volume Zion, there's like so many svarim from the Tzemach Tzedek. So in Or HaTorah, Shmois, volume Zion, I think there's 7 volumes just for Shmois, on page 2602. So Beis Taf Reish Beis. So it's for like 3 or 4 pages, the Tzemach Tzedek discusses this concept. Obviously assuming based on the pshat of the Alter Rebbe, and he says that this concept is referring specifically to the Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, that it's the names of Hashem. Torah Shebal Peh doesn't have that magic, because It's not the letters aren't as particular. And he goes on and makes the argument that when you refer to something as the name, and he brings another example. He says that we find that Torah is called Mikra. The Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, is called Mikra, based on this concept of the Alter Rebbe that you're calling out to someone, like a shame, Mikra, you're calling someone. And he makes the argument that there's actually a Maila in Torah Shebal Peh over Torah Shebechsav, because when you say a name and you're calling out to someone, that denotes that there is some sort of distance. You're two separate people. There's you and the person you're calling. Like we have the concept that if you were alone, you wouldn't need a name because you don't need, to call. You don't need to call yourself. A name is when there's someone separate. So the Tzemach Tzedek says, because the study of Torah Shebal Peh is a deeper study, and therefore when something is studied in depth, you connect to it on a deeper level. Therefore, Torah Shebal Peh, you connect Hashem beyond just the name relationship. It's a deeper relationship. Torah Shebechsav, that's where there's this distance, but you're connecting, but it's a connection of calling someone's name. Okay.